Angola is the largest oil producer in Africa, with oil sales bringing vast amounts of money to the country. From 2003 to 2008, on the back of high oil prices, its economy grew rapidly. Yet, despite all this growth in oil revenue, Angola is one of the poorest and most unequal countries in the world. The elites seem to be doing fine, but the average citizen's life looks miserable. Who's to blame for this? Well, from 1979 to 2017, Angola was ruled by President Eduardo dos Santos. He came to power at a time when Angola was engaged in a civil war. The three groups were the communist MPLA, who were also the government, the anti-communist FNLA, and the initially Maoist and later pro-capitalist UNITA.
Our journey to victory has begun! Death to the MPLA!
Dos Santos was from the MPLA. The FNLA, when he came to power, was largely defeated, but UNITA would prove a challenge. The war was made worse because of foreign interventions, as the US and South Africa would support UNITA, while the Soviet Union and Cuba would aid the MPLA. Cuba would even send 36,000 soldiers to assist the government. During this time, the MPLA government would enact socialist economic policies like nationalizations of industries and farms. But corruption and a lack of technical expertise to effectively run these enterprises, since most of them used to be run by the Portuguese who had left, meant that they were being run inefficiently. Disruptions and instability caused by the civil war was also a problem. Angola would see its infrastructure destroyed, agricultural lands and plantations ruined, diamond mines and oil wealth being extracted by UNITA and the government to buy weapons instead of being used to provide goods and services to the people. Much of the countryside would become littered with landmines, which is a problem that exists even today. Angola before the civil war had a promising economy, with the biggest problem being it was mostly controlled by the Portuguese. The civil war ruined all that economic progress and the government had to build it back up from scratch. There was hope for the war's end in 1992, but that proved an illusion, with it continuing till 2002, when the two parties would sign a peace deal making UNITA an opposition party. Dos Santos had already begun transitioning the country towards a more pro-market economy in 1990. But the civil war prevented further progress. Now with the war's end, they could finally focus their attention on what's most important.
Raid Shadow Legends.
No, the people. During the 2000s, Angola's oil production went up, which combined with high oil prices allowed it to finance the country's reconstruction, building infrastructure, resettling the displaced population, reviving agriculture and improving services like healthcare and education. To some extent, these policies were carried out. It's just that the implementation process was riddled with corruption. Dos Santos' government might possibly have been one of the most corrupt regimes in the world. Most of the infrastructure was built in the capital Luanda and benefited elites the most, while the poorer parts of the city as well as the countryside was largely ignored. Resettlement of 4 million people was successfully carried out, but improvement in the quality of life did not happen. The majority of Angolans are involved in agriculture, but productivity is very low due to a lack of investment, and as a result Angola is a massive food importer. Schools and hospitals are few and are of a very poor standard. Jobs aren't available since the country almost exclusively focuses on oil and the diamond industry, which doesn't employ a ton of labor. The best jobs in these industries are held by foreigners and cronies. Dos Santos' daughter, Isabel Dos Santos, is also a true girl boss. She had a net worth of $1.4 billion in 2020 and was once Africa's richest woman. Is she a genius and visionary?
No.
She used her family connections to amass all this wealth by buying stakes in companies operating in Angola's strategic industries. She was even made the head of Angola's state oil company in 2016. Dos Santos' son was also head of the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Are you serious?
The government after Dos Santos removed Isabel in 2017 and has gone after the family while at the same time trying to bring the money back, but this will take time. The corruption and oil wealth in Angola has enriched the elites, but the majority of their investments are outside of Angola, harming the country further. Luanda, or at least the elite parts of it, looks like a city of a developed country, since that's where the focus has been. But a look at the poorer parts of the city or the countryside says it all. The next question one asks is, why doesn't the voter, since Angola is a democracy, kick them out? Well, Angola is also an authoritarian state, with very limited if any freedoms and human rights violations being common. The elections also seem to be stacked in the ruling party's favor, making change tough. Another issue is Angola's overdependence on oil and diamonds. Oil specifically makes up a huge chunk of the economy, a majority of exports and revenue. Diversification efforts have been ineffective and slow, as the government takes the easy option of pumping out more oil. In 2016, the consequences of this was felt as the price of oil came down, resulting in an economic decline. With Angola, we see a country whose elites use the oil wealth to enrich themselves while giving crumbs to the population. Instead of something that could accelerate the country's development, It has proven to be a curse.